So I'm a cloud solution architect specializing in data and AI. I exclusively work in the banking industry. I'm part of the financial services team within Microsoft. I'm certified in all the data and AI certifications on Azure, and I'm a certified trainer also. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the analytics services on Azure, and how you can leverage that to either migrate or modernize your analytics workload that you have, right? So today's data reality, the majority of analytics projects that are happening today in all the big companies, or any companies for that matter, they kind of stem from the challenges that people have a lot of data and they're generating data, right? But then how do they do data governance? How do they do data analytics? And how do they maintain the operational part of their existing databases, right? So, and how do I, it's a basic question that somebody, you hire a data scientist and they want to know like what data is there in the organization, right? That's the first thing, because all the data is silos and there are different management teams. So it's hard for somebody new or even a mature team within the company to know what other data exists within the organization, right? And even if the data is there, is it trustworthy? Can you use it, right? Who has access to it, right? And how do you maintain compliance that going forward in the security and authenticity and the authorization of the data is maintained, right? So those are challenges of every organization today. And and the common challenge of organization as a whole is how do you mature your analytics? How do you use a unified analytics so that different teams are not doing their own thing, and you have a common set of pattern that everybody is following, right? And how do you use the insight to make better decision as an organization, right? And everybody knows these are the challenges, but there are reasons why these challenges are not solved yet. Okay, number one reason, cost. Like, who is going to sit down and re-architect everything, right? How can you be agile when you are trying to change your analytics workload? Analytics is kind of one of the most complex workload that an organization has, right? And once you have it, then how do you scale, right? This is where cloud comes in, because when it talks about cost, it's the capex versus opex thing comes in, because cloud changes your cost to OPEX, so you're not paying a large upfront cost. And of course, agility and scale becomes easier in the cloud. And the analytics platform that different teams have, it kind of falls into two different types, depending on how they structure it and how the management is set up, right? One is centralized ownership. So this is kind of common. People think it's easier that the analytics platform is owned by one team, and every other line of business within the company kind of becomes the customer of this central analytics team, right? So a team needs an analytics, so this team would provide that, right? So this kind of becomes easier, that there is a central team that is managing, so you need less number of people to manage your analytics. But then on the downside, it also becomes a single point of failure. It also creates challenges that you're now relying on few people to serve everybody. So everybody cannot go at their own speed. They kind of form a single queue that people have to be served as they come, right? The other pattern is decentralized. So the centralization is the problem. You go to the other extreme where you decentralize, right? Where you let people do whatever they want, but you can still have a centralized team that is kind of creating a pattern and an architecture that is enforced. So any team can do what they want as long as they comply with the architecture and governance principles set by a centralized team, right? So that way, everybody kind of implements the principle, right? But they can go at their own speed. Microsoft is the leader in BI analytics and BI, according to Gartner. And also in Forrester, we were named the leader in the Forrester Wave, right? So what is the Microsoft solution that allows people to do this? Last year, it was announced, and the term is called Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform, but it's not a product per se. Like if you go to Azure portal and look for intelligent data platform, there is no service or product that shows up there. It's really a design principle and set of data services that are available on Azure and the broader Microsoft Cloud that are seamlessly integrated together to form that framework that a centralized team can use, or if you choose to use decentralized way, that can be the central framework that can have those principles embedded that every other team can use, right? So this intelligent data platform can form that common architecture that forms your central analytics platform that all lines of business within the company can use, right? So what are the services there and what sets us apart, right? This is a question that everybody keeps asking me. Okay, well, all the services that you're talking about, everybody else also has it. So what's different about Microsoft, right? So you see the top panel, that kind of forms the services that are used in the intelligent data platform. First, you have your databases. There are, traditional relational databases and NoSQL. Then you have a set of analytics services. Then you have machine learning services. And then you have a central governance pane that kind of spans across all the services. And that allows you to set up governance principle that spans across all your data services. Now, what sets Microsoft apart is that Microsoft is not just one cloud, right? We are a 3-cloud company. There is M365, which is the Office and Azure AD, right? And that has the Microsoft Power Platform. Then there is a Microsoft Dynamics, which is the CRM platform. And then Azure, which is the compute platform, right? And it's these 3 clouds that are seamlessly integrated together that is kind of giving Microsoft the edge, right? None of these services are new. Almost for each of these services, there is a vendor who has it, right? But Microsoft, the only one that has all of it together, and they are all homegrown solutions, so they are seamlessly integrated together, right? So you can have, your CRM from one vendor, you can have your identity from another vendor, you can have databases from another vendor, and then you hope that they all work together. And there is probably a way to make it work, but because Microsoft has everything homegrown, they kind of work seamlessly together. So that's the Microsoft difference. Okay. And this is kind of the architecture that Microsoft recommends on creating that central analytics platform that can be shared across different lines of business. I'll go into details of each of the service in a little bit. So you see your on-prem data and whatever data feed that you have, it can go through this layer of integration where you can store it or you can transform your data, and then it can go through different pipelines depending on what type of analysis you are doing, right? At the top, you have your data engineering pipeline. Then you have your descriptive analytics where you're kind of storing your served data and creating reports. And then you have a layer for your machine learning and advanced analytics. And then you have a layer for when you want to create a data that you want to share with external customer. It could be different organization within your company, or it could be an external company that you want to share data with. And all of this can be connected to your governance tool on Azure. It's called Azure Purview. That is the governance tool that kind of connects everything so that your data governance principles are enforced across all layers. Okay, so starting with the central analytics, the analytics in Azure is mainly done by a tool called Azure Synapse. So Synapse is an analytics platform that combines the SQL data warehouse, the traditional MPP architecture data warehousing. It has Spark Pool for advanced analytics. And then there is something called Data Explorer, which is designed specifically for analyzing application logs, right? So this kind of decouples your storage and compute. So you store the data any way you want, and you can create your analytics using the compute that you need, right? So if you have a traditional data warehousing type of need, you can use your SQL pool to do your data warehousing. If you have more advanced analytics, big data type of analytics, you can use Spark Pool. If you're trying to just do application log analysis, then you can use Data Explorer. And it also has a connector for like Event Hub. So if you are doing real-time analytics, then you can have data flowing in real time into the system that you can analyze in real time. I talked about the Office and the Biz apps, the dynamics, right? So there is a common data model that these services use so that it's easy to kind of plug and play the data that is created by these teams. And that data template or that data repository is called Dataverse, right? And Synapse has Synapse Link for SQL Server, Cosmos DB, which is the NoSQL, and the Dataverse. So Synapse can seamlessly copy the data from these different data repository into Synapse so that you can do operational analytics while your other systems are performing and doing your operational data. So you can have people using a CRM system, or you can have your application using a database which is live, and the data from that is replicating into Synapse so that you can do your analytics in real time and not impact your operational infrastructure, right? And the way that is done is through a service called Synapse Link, right? And the Synapse Link creates, for example, in this case, it's talking about Cosmos DB. So Cosmos DB has different containers. So you have one container for where your data is stored, which is consumed by your live application. If you enable Synapse Link, then it will create an analytical store where data will be seamlessly replicated using transaction replication from your application container to your analytics store, and Cosmos and Synapse can use that analytics store to produce a report and not take away throughput of your live application, so that your application does not slow down, and you can still have real-time analytics. Okay. Similar to Synapse, there is Azure Databricks. Databricks is a third-party company that has first-party service on Azure, and Databricks is also kind of a data platform in itself. It is created by the people who created Spark. So it kind of started out as a premium Spark offering, but it has since then evolved into being a full-fledged data platform. So you can create a, they have their proprietary data format called the Delta, which they have open sourced. And so you can create a Delta lake by storing your data in Delta format, and you can have transactions supported by them. So you can have data coming into your regular blob store and still support transaction and rollback. So if your data is never going to be corrupt, because you can maintain consistency by making sure that you only accept the data to be committed if it meets your consistency requirement, right? And you can do data engineering using Spark. You can use machine learning using MLflow. If there is a need to use MPP type of warehousing type of need here, you can, Databricks has Databricks SQL that kind of works on a Spark SQL, which can mimic the warehousing need. Otherwise, it seamlessly integrates with Synapse. So if you need to use the MPP style data warehousing, you can still use Synapse, and the reporting can be done by Power BI. Okay. Power BI is the reporting tool that is used within the Microsoft ecosystem. And Power BI falls under the Microsoft M365 cloud rather than Azure, because it is part of a bigger ecosystem called the Power Platform. So the Power Platform is Microsoft's no-code, low-code platform. And it has the big components are Power BI is there for report, where you can use drag and drop components to build your visualization. There is Power Apps to use drag and drop component to build visual apps. Okay. And there is Flow for doing automation. Right. So you can use drag and drop component to build your automation. So, you can add logic that when something happens, I want this to happen. Right. And there are connectors available to different types of data sources using data connector to Power Platform. You can embed AI into these Power Apps using AI Builder. Instead of writing your code, you can just, the AI services that exist on Azure, you can consume them from your Power App. And I talked about common data service. So this common data service that uses the common data model, they can be used to make sure the data that you create in your Power App complies with that common data model. So they can be easily discovered and be easily reused by other applications. And this is the AI portfolio. So Microsoft has a set of products depending on what type of users are going to use. So I talked about, the citizen developers who need that low-code, no-code type of platform. So these Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, the Power Platform ecosystem can be used by citizen developer because they can use drag and drop UI to build everything. And then for developers who just want to develop, don't necessarily know machine learning, right? They can use the cognitive services, which are pre-trained models, right? So these are AI models that are built by Microsoft, and they have been trained using data that Microsoft owns, and they are purpose-built for specific use case. For example, the cognitive search can search across multiple documents and extract entity and information. So you can have your own enterprise search engine, right? You can have, vision service, which can do things like extract text out of images. It can describe what an image is. There is immersive reader, so you can have the AI kind of read a document, or you can talk to an AI and it would type the text for you, right? And some of these models are also customizable. So if you are not satisfied with how it's trained using the Microsoft data and you want to give it further input, for example, the Vision API is trained to detect, different types of animals, different locations. But let's say you want to build a model where you want to detect at your door or people who are walking into your office, are they your employee or they are outside, right? So then you have to give it your employee images and give it additional label that these are employees and these are not employees, right? So you can have a custom vision model and give it those images and give it the label. By using that, you would say that whatever you are trained on using Microsoft data, also take my data and my label and remember this when you're giving me the output, right? So you can use that, and developers can use it to build AI apps without actually knowing AI or doing the proper AI code. But if you do have data scientists who want to custom code everything, they want to implement their own algorithm, or maybe use some library for algorithm for part of it and write their own custom code for other part. For that, there is Azure Machine Learning, which can, you will give you a notebook and you can use any type of compute using FPGA or, just GPU, memory optimized CPU, whatever you need. to custom code your AI. It also has a drag and drop tool. So, some citizen developers can use those to build their machine learning pipeline, and people who are more seasoned, they can just write their code from scratch to build their machine learning. And it integrates with AKS for deployment, and you can build CI/CD pipelines to kind of have a repetitive pipeline that you can execute as your data becomes stale. You can rerun the pipeline to refresh your model with new data. Right? And Microsoft is not new to AI. We have 8 research centers. These are some of the major achievements. So the first FPGA was deployed in the Microsoft data center. The speech recognition human parity was achieved by Microsoft. The first machine translation human parity, and conversational human parity, and object detection human parity, all of these were achieved by our research team. Right? So the machine learning AI that we talked about so far, these are kind of, if you know the algorithm, these are basically the deep learning type of algorithm, right? But now it's taking to a step further, that now the new generation of machine learning models, they don't just limit to those deep learning models, they also expand into more areas where the hyperparameters are larger. These are much larger models that require much more compute and much more memory, because they store a lot more hyperparameter than your traditional deep learning model. And because of that, they can do more advanced things. Like you might have heard, ads, or you might have read news that, a machine learning model or an AI model was able to write a movie script, or AI was able to create its own music, right? So these are those types of models, and Microsoft has partnership with OpenAI to do a joint research and build this type of model. And in corporate sector, in enterprise, these models are used for business use cases, like people are using it to create contracts. They are training the model saying, this is the way we create contract when we have a new vendor. So the AI can create a contract for them, or it can take in a bunch of documents and summarize that in this contract, I see these are the main bullet points that you need to look at. So you don't need to read a 100-page contract. You can just focus on those bullet points. And these OpenAI models are available through Microsoft partnership to be deployed to your Azure infrastructure. Another example of this large model AI system is GitHub CoPilot. So within GitHub, if you are writing a code, the GitHub CoPilot can just look at your code and tell you that what you are doing wrong, or give you suggestions. It's kind of having an AI as a pair programmer. Okay. So I talked about governance. So Microsoft Purview is what is used to do governance across all of the data services. And Purview has different components, like the data catalog is what Purview uses to kind of store the metadata about your data, to say which data lives where, right? There is a data sharing component that can be used to share data internally and externally. And for data officers, it generates data insights. So within Purview, you can tell who is using what type of data, which database contains your sensitive information, and things like that. And within Purview, you can assign data policy that says that these are my sensitive data and they should only be accessible by these people. Or for these data, I want to enforce access in a certain way, right? So all of those data policy you can enforce within Purview, and it will be enforced across all of your data that is available in any of your data source that's connected to Purview. And data map is how Purview kind of maintains the connectivity to all of your data sources. Okay. If you are a building something from scratch, or if you use Azure services to build your, like the intelligent data platform, then you can use all of these services to create your operational analytics, right? But a lot of big organizations, they already have their analytics developed in-house using different vendor product, right? So now that cloud is there, they want to take advantage of cloud to scale and reduce cost and innovate. So how do you migrate your existing analytics workload to Azure and without impacting your operation, or without stopping your existing development? But for that, Microsoft has several tools that have been created. So there are tools that you can use depending on where you're coming from. So these are some of the top vendors that are there for analytics. So depending on what you are using, there is a specific tool that is available that can kind of give you a recommendation that if you're coming from this particular analytics platform, then this is how you should do your schema mapping. And this is how you should, these are some of the code that you might need to rewrite because they are not going to be compliant in the cloud. So you know exactly what code you might need to change, what schema mapping you need to do. And a lot of this can be done by Microsoft through Microsoft investment, and we have partners that do this. But having those tools kind of gives you an early access to exactly what will be involved when you try to migrate that to the cloud. So you can decide how you want to migrate and when is the right time for you to migrate without kind of going through a long discussion about the analysis, because the tool can look at your existing infrastructure, your existing workload, and tell you exactly what will be needed to migrate. So you can estimate how much would be the cost and how much would be the effort. And then you can talk to your Microsoft CSA like me to say, tell us, how you can give us the best possible option, right? So that's the end of it. I know I covered a lot. If you have any questions, we can talk about it, or you can take down my contact information from Ron, or my LinkedIn was there on the slide. You can email me or message me on LinkedIn.